Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kieran and I'm a professional web designer and developer living here in Cambodia. And I know it's been nearly over a year since I posted last time, but before we get started on this video, I wanted to basically thank everyone who's been still subscribing and commenting on the videos. I've done my best to reply to those who have. But yeah, thanks so much for sticking around, and I have a bunch of other videos kind of in the backlog, so I hope to post a little bit more regularly from now on. But yeah, today I wanted to create a quick video tutorial basically helping those who are just getting started with web design or web development, and specifically with Webflow. And I wanted to walk you through building a simple profile card website that you can share on your social media, something similar-ish to like Linktree or something like that, but built in Webflow and fully customizable. And I'm going to take you step by step, walking you through how to do that in Webflow. And yeah, this is really helping those who are just getting started and trying to grasp all the basic concepts of web design and development. So yeah, let's get started on the computer and I'll walk you through that now. So a really important concept that we need to grasp before we dive into Webflow is something called the box model. And basically the box model is what we use to think about the HTML or the skeleton of our website. So we can break down any element. So just take YouTube as an example. So in YouTube we have the, let me just draw this out quickly. We have the screen and then we have the navigation at the top. And that navigation can be thought of as a box. And then inside that box, we have different elements such as the logo, and then the search bar, and then the profile icon in the top right. And all these can also be seen as boxes. So we basically have our main navigation box, and then we have a box for the logo, we have a box for the search bar, and then we have a box for our profile icon. And then even these boxes inside the main navigation box can be broken down even further. So take the search bar, for example. So inside the search bar, we'll have some search text perhaps, and then a button, and maybe even an icon, search icon. And then this text can also be thought of as a box, of course. And then the button, another box, and then the search icon, another box as well. So the second concept that we need to grasp in this kind of box model, so that's how we style a particular box. So if we zoom in a little bit, I've kind of picked a different color pen. Let's just pick one of these boxes as an example. So let's take the search bar. So if we draw out the search bar here a little bit larger, and then we can give it a name, a specific name such as search, something that makes sense and that we'll remember later on as our site grows. And then you'll notice that this search bar or search box has a particular set width and a set height, for example, and this is all broken down in our CSS. To recap, the HTML is like the skeleton or the framework of our site, just the boxes and where they're positioned on the page. But the CSS is what takes care of all the styling, such as the width and the height, the color of the button, for example, font size, for example, how big or small the text is, and again, how wide or how high a particular element is. And we can take any element, so even the profile icon in the corner. So let's break that down and call it profile. And our CSS again is going to determine that it is in fact a circle. It's going to determine the size of the circle and also the width, height, etc., etc. So that is what our CSS is. So before we dive into Webflow, I just want to quickly show you what we're going to be building today, and that is this profile card, as I mentioned in my video intro. So basically it's just a profile website that has an image of yourself, and then your name, your job description or job title, and then a short description about who you are, and then a few links to some social media stuff. And if I kind of just scale the screen here, you can see it's pretty responsive and will work across different devices. So that's going to be really handy. You can use this to show your work and show a bit about yourself on something like Instagram. And it's going to kind of function like a kind of Linktree type thing, but built in Webflow and a little bit more customizable in terms of the design. So after you sign up for Webflow, you're going to be greeted by this dashboard, and of course yours is going to look a bit different if this is the first time that you've used Webflow, because as you can see I already have a few different projects here that I've done before. But then if you are blank and completely brand new to Webflow, you can literally just click on this new project tab at the top here. And then we're going to start with a blank site preset, and let's just call it profile card site for YouTube. So after we've created that blank project, you're going to be in the designer view, and I'll just give a really quick tour of this because Webflow has a load of really good resources that I'll also share in the description below that you can reference. So yeah, just really quick, on the left we basically have all the controls to basically add different elements and navigate between different elements that we will eventually have on our canvas. We can navigate between pages, and then we have some CMS stuff, e-commerce stuff, and also the asset manager, and then some general settings and backups and stuff like that. On the top we basically can toggle different display views, so this is kind of like common device sizes and stuff, and basically any modifications that we do with these kind of views toggled is only going to affect that kind of device. At the top right here we basically have the controls to publish our site, transfer it to another Webflow user. We can even export the code depending on your Webflow plan, and then here you just have some progress kind of indicators and undo and redo. And then the right hand side is basically where we'll be styling all our boxes. So yeah, we can think of the left as where we add our boxes. Obviously we have all these kind of elements which are just those skeleton HTML boxes that we discussed in the intro. And then on the right is where we can select those boxes and basically do all of our styling, changing the width, changing the color, changing the fonts and stuff like that. So the first thing that we'll want to do is go over to our left hand panel and select add an element. And then here you can see we have a bunch of different elements that we're going to use, but in this example, we're just going to drag in what's called a div block, which is basically your most basic kind of block that you can use, or box that you can use, and it's very flexible and customized. So we're going to basically click on that, drag it into the canvas here, and as you can see it appears on the top, but if we toggle into our preview you can see that we can't see it there because we haven't added any kind of styles or attributed any styles to this box. Basically we just need to give it a specific name such as background. And this basically allows us to style this element and also give it a memorable name so that we can then find it easily in our navigator view. So once we've done that, now we can have a play with all these kind of styling settings that we have in the right hand side. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the background that we've called now is our background box, and now we need to attribute some styles to it to make it appear and be styled as we want it. So down here in the width, we're going to set this to 100 view width or VW, and also 100 view height. And basically view width and view height is just a way that you can size elements, and it just stands for what I said. It's pretty straightforward, view width and view height. So this particular background box is always going to be 100% of the view width wherever you are viewing it, whether on mobile, tablet, iMac, whatever it might be. And it's also going to be 100 view height, so it's going to fill the whole height and the full width of any device. Now we're going to scroll down. That's all we have to do on the sizing, and we're basically going to go down here to add an image. So if we go down to the image and gradient section, we can just click on the plus, and then here we get this kind of weird looking background image that's just repeating across the whole of our box. So we've got to change a few things here to make it that big cover, full screen cover image that we like. So here you can just toggle on cover. As you can see, it already looks a little bit better, but we can also change the position, so whether it's positioned to the top, the right, top right, but for this example, we just need it center. And then here is also important, so if tile is on, that basically is going to be tiling infinitely on this kind of background section there, as you saw before we set it to the cover. So for this, we just have to basically hit don't tile, and that is done for the background. And of course, we don't want to keep it looking like this with the background image, so we can basically go back to this view here and we can choose an image from our computer. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll be adding our card element after that. Grabbed an image from Unsplash, and I then just resized it a bit to make sure that the file size is not huge, because that will drastically increase the load time of our site, and everyone knows that we want a quick loading site, and it's always going to be better. And then we can just click on choose image and then click on this little upload icon here. And it's just a kind of cool looking space background, and just give that a second to upload, and then you'll see that that's going to fill where this current placeholder background image is there. And as you can see, it's already looking pretty nice. It's filling the whole screen, which is exactly what we want, and it's not repeating or anything like that. Okay, cool. So the final thing that we need to do here after the basic styling is basically drag in another div block, which is going to be the box for our card. So basically you go again to the top here, and go to div block and drag that onto the background. So make sure that you're dragging it into the background and not into the body like that. So you can just drag it directly on the canvas, and then you can double check in the navigator exactly where that's going to be. We want to do this because we want this card to basically be what's called a child element of the background, which is our parent box. So again, this goes back to the box model I discussed earlier. So this is our main box, and then inside here we're going to have a few more different boxes there as well. But for now we can just add another selector and call this card, and then we can give it a width and a height as we did with background. So let's give this kind of a width of maybe 500 pixels. And you'll notice I'm not using view width and view height for this element, because we want it to basically be pretty consistent across different devices. We don't really want it to scale proportionally according to our device size, and that's what would happen if we set it to view width and view height. So yeah, we're going to give it what's called a fixed width and a fixed height. So that's why we're using pixels. So actually this is going to be 550 and 600 pixels high, and as you can see it's kind of drawing there, and it's in the top left. We'll address that in a second, but for now let's just go back down to what you've already seen before, where you have images, but this time we're going to select the one below that, which is color. So we can click on this and basically just drag this to white. And then just below we have borders, so this allows us to put on kind of a curved corners, which looks a bit nicer than just having it as a linear kind of box. So I'm just going to set this to something like 10, and as you can see, or even more, 15, let's go for it. And you can see this gives us a nice kind of rounded edge. But as you can see, it's still in the top left, which is definitely not ideal and not looking too good. So we basically have to go back to our background parent element, and either we can select that in the canvas, or we can use this navigator. As I mentioned before, it's kind of like a tree view of all the boxes in your site, and you can just click on it here. And once we have that selected, we're going to go right on top to this layout property, and we're going to toggle something called flex. And basically flex display layout, this is basically going to position anything that's inside this background box. So all the child boxes are going to be positioned according to what we set on the parent element there as well. But actually we can just go to vertical, center, and then center. So we're centering everything, and as you can see, our card is looking very nicely centered in the middle, and we just had to basically do 2 clicks to kind of lay everything out. Yeah, it's quite good to wrap your head around this kind of idea of parent affecting child elements, because that's essentially how CSS works from a technical point of view. But we can still think about it in terms of boxes, which makes it a little bit easier to grasp. So anything that we set in the layout on our parent is going to affect what's inside it, so the card element there as well. So again, we can keep our card selected, and then we can go to the add element on the left hand side again, and guess what, we're going to be adding another div block inside here, and we're also going to add a couple. So we're going to add this one, so this is going to be our image, this is going to be our text, and then this is going to be where we add our social links. As you can see, these are kind of all stacking on top of each other and not particularly laid out, but that's because we haven't attributed any styles to them, as we both saw with the background and the card as well. So once we have those in there, we can start going into each one of these blocks and giving them a class, a selector. So again, it's kind of like rinse and repeat, but it's a bit different. So this one we're going to call image. The second one we're going to call text wrapper. Then this one here we're going to just call it social media wrapper. And I like to call it wrapper because it's a good clear indication that this block is basically wrapping other boxes inside of it. So make sure you have your image selected, and then we can start to add the width and the height. And we're going to be using a different unit as well here. So for now, I'll just set this to 100% width, and then something like 30% height, or a bit more, 40% height. And if you've got a keen eye, you'll probably notice that this is only proportionate to the card that it's in. So anything that's inside of the card box is going to be relative to the card. And that's basically comes back to the fundamental principle of CSS. It stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So everything's cascading down. Image is a child of this card parent box. So that's why it's basically relative to the card. So it's not going to be taking 100% width of the whole screen. It's just going to be proportionate to the parent element that it's inside of. And as you've already seen before, we can scroll down to the image here, and then we can just go here and set again to cover cover and we don't want it to tile at all. And then again, we can just upload an image of ourselves by clicking on choose image, upload, and then I'm just going to upload this now, and then we'll get started on the text and the social media links. The image and set it to cover and just kind of tweaked it a little bit, and we will need to just add that kind of 10 or 15 pixel border radius. We'll want to set it just on those two top corners. And we have to do this because this image is sitting on top of the card, so we've got to make sure that the kind of radius and stuff matches up. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is work on the text wrapper. So make sure you have the text wrapper selected. We get to add a new element this time, which is a typography element. So again, we just go to the select element and click on a heading, and then make sure to drag it into the text wrapper. And then in the navigator, you can confirm that, yeah, it is indeed inside the text wrapper. Cool, so we have this heading 1, and then underneath that, we're going to drag in a paragraph element, and that's going to be our name and our job title. So we can already type that in. And to do that, I'm just selecting on the heading element, and you can see as I'm kind of hovering over, the boxes are clearly highlighted, so it's pretty easy to know what you're clicking on. And then I just double click, and then I can add in any text that I want. So it's that easy. So I'm putting my name, and then I'm just going to put in my job title. So web designer and YouTuber there. As you can see, again, for anyone with a keen eye, that the text is basically sitting right on the corner of our card, which is not really what we want to achieve. So we're going to add something called padding to our parent box, the text wrapper. So make sure you have the text wrapper selected, scroll up to the top, and just underneath layout we have spacing, and I'm basically holding shift and dragging towards the middle, and this allows us to create an even padding left, top, right, and bottom. So I think this is looking pretty good. So now, similarly to what we've done with all the other elements, we click on the heading, for example. We're going to add a selector and just call it main heading, or whatever you want, and then scroll down, and here we get a little bit more control over the font and the weight and the size and anything like you have in sort of like a word processor or Google Docs and stuff like that. You can just go in here and change the font. So let's change this to something like Open Sans, which is a very nice web font, and then we can set the weight, so let's set it to bold or even extra bold. Looks pretty cool. And then we can change the color as well. And again, that's exactly the same, rinse and repeat with the kind of job title part here. So we can select on a paragraph and just call this something like subtitle. And that's it for the name. Oh yeah, and the only other one we have to add is the description. So we can go add element, drag in another paragraph just underneath the subtitle, and let's just call this description, for example. Set it to Open Sans, 14, 15 is pretty good, and then we can just do a quick introduction to ourselves. So we can even add emojis. On a Mac, I'm just Control-Command-Space, and we can just do some emojis in there to add a bit of character and personality. Kieran, Kieran, love teaching YouTube. If you enjoyed this tutorial, feel free to go inside. Cool, so that's that. So that's the heading, and then the next part that we just need to do is the social media wrapper. So a good idea would be to basically set the same padding that we had in the text wrapper. So let's just select the social media, and I think it was 30. So again, I'm just holding shift, drag it to the middle. And you don't always have to hold shift, you can just click into these individually and style them how you want. And then we're going to add a link box, and you can either add it one by one, like this, link box, and basically that's going to be the parent of our icon, so that we can then link it to our social media icons. So again, it comes back to this parent-child aspect. So actually within this social media wrapper, we're going to have basically 3 boxes within there. We're going to have the main social media wrapper parent box, then we're going to have a link block, and then inside there, we're going to have the icon for our social media icon. And you can do what I'm doing the whole time, which is drag it from this kind of side panel here. But because this is basically going to be the same for our 4 or 5 social media links, we can just select that element, hit Command, and basically paste it in like that. So we're going to want to select that parent element again, and again we're going to want to put this to flex as we did with the main card itself. And this time we're going to want to stick to this horizontal direction, have everything aligned left, and then have have everything centered as well. So that means when we go in and drop in that, it's all going to appear nicely in line and not be stacking on top of each other as you just saw. But yeah, I've just uploaded them like you saw with the profile and the background, and basically now we can start dropping those into these social media boxes that we just created. So let's select the image. As you can see when I hover over, it's pretty easy. And then we can just go to the settings on the right hand side here, choose image, and then we can drop it in like that. So that's our YouTube icon, and then it's just rinse and repeat again. And so we have YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram for this example, and you can basically pick whatever icons you want. But as you'll notice, they're not like too nicely styled. They're right next to each other, and when a user goes to click on it, they probably may accidentally click on the wrong one because they're so tightly packed together. So what we're going to want to do is basically go into our main parent link block, and then we want to basically style this parent of the icon that we just dropped in there as well. So exactly the same as what we've already seen. Just go over here to style. Let's give it a nice memorable selector name. So let's just call it social media icon wrapper. Instead of holding shift and doing it on all, you can see that's going to mess up the alignment here. So I'm just going to Control Z. We just want to basically set a padding on probably something like the top, the bottom, and the right hand side there as well. Maybe make this 15. But as you'll notice, and as I was talking about earlier, the fact that this one has the padding that we added, but these ones don't, you may be wondering why that is happening. And that is because you'll notice that we haven't attributed a selector to these link blocks. They're just the default link blocks that we added. It's just the skeleton. We need to add that selector so that then we can style each individual box, remember. But the fact that we've already created it for this and we want it to be the same for all of these icons means that we can just click on the link block and then we can just give it the same class, and you can see it appears as an existing class that we already created of social media icon wrapper, and then that's going to give this box exactly the same properties that we just set in this one. So that's where classes become really powerful and important in web design and web development, because it allows you to reuse your styles throughout the site. So once that's done, that is basically the final element of the site that we wanted to build, and we can go up here and hit on the publish icon here, and you can see Webflow gives us what's called a staging domain. So that just is basically a URL that we can publish to and test how our site looks before we set it to a real URL. But yeah, I can just open this up, and as you can see, this is a website domain that you can then share, you can use, and then you can see everything is set here, and it's all looking pretty nice already. So back in the designer again, we just want to basically assign URLs to these social media links, because right now they're not going anywhere. They're not doing anything, so we can just basically click on that parent element again, and as you can see here, we have this little settings button here, or we can access the same settings on the right hand side here, so it's up to you. We can just use this one for now. It's something new, and as you can see, we just get this little tooltip where we can define our link settings. So really quick, this is basically just setting it to an external URL. We can set that to a page, a section on the page, an email address, a phone number, or even an attachment. For this example, we're going to be linking to our YouTube channel, so you can just drop in your whatever your YouTube channel is. So yeah, let's just set this to YouTube, and then we can even kind of preview that just up here quickly. And as you can see, that is set, and that is opening our YouTube channel or our YouTube link. And that's exactly the same. We can just toggle this off. For all the other social media links, we can just go in, drop in our Twitter, everything like that, and then that is the link set. So the other final thing that you may want to do is toggle between these different displays, and like I mentioned in the introduction, that this basically allows us to customize the styling on a particular device. So on mobile, for example, you can see on some smaller mobile devices it's going to be kind of overlapping, which is not really ideal, so we don't really want that. So if we go all the way back to our main parent card, we can adjust some of these settings, such as the width and the height. And in this case, because there's a lot of different mobile device sizes, it probably makes sense to do something like set this to a view width. And that means regardless of the device size, it's always going to be 85% of that particular screen size. So as you can see, I'm scaling here, it's always sticking to that 85% view width. Whereas here, it's kind of fine to have it as the pixel width, because it's like still fits, and we don't want it to scale too much across too many of the larger display ports, because it looks fine already. And as you can see, because we're just restyling the parent element, everything inside here is more or less looking okay. So we can also set this to something like 60 view height, or even more, 65, whatever it might be. And as you can see on different kind of phone views, this looks pretty good. If you wanted to, you could go into some of these wrappers and start adjusting the padding and stuff like that. And as you can see, that's only affecting the size on those mobile views. It's not messing up our stuff that we've already done on the desktop view sizes. Social media icons are not quite in the card, so we can just go back and maybe set this to something like 70 or whatever, and that's looking pretty nice. Even if we wanted to, we can maybe drop the padding down a little bit like that. 70 view height is pretty big, and then we can make this something like 60 or 65. It's looking pretty good. That's really it. You can kind of tweak these to how you want. I'm pretty happy with this right now, so we can just quickly go up again to publish, and that's going to automatically update. So then if we went to this domain on our phone or whatever, you'll see that it's all looking pretty nice there as well, and perfect for sharing and ready to go. So thanks so much for watching this video, and I hope you found it useful and interesting. And as always, please feel free to comment down below. I'll do my best to reply to any messages. And also you'll find all the links in the description. If you've never heard of Webflow before, you can sign up, and that is an affiliate link, so that will be directly supporting me and my content. So yeah, feel free to sign up using that link if you haven't signed up for Webflow already. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, feel free to subscribe and like the video as well. And then I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.